Welcome to the People's Guild.
Each week we explore the Splinterland universe with guests from all across the mythical land of Pretoria.
Join us on our journey as we discuss the evolution of the game, the strategy, the lore, and the exciting path that lies ahead.
To support the People's Guild, make sure you subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, and also check us out on PeakD, YouTube, and Twitter.
Send your questions, suggestions, and epic battles in our comments through Twitter or email at thepeoplesguildspl@gmail.com. We'll feature the best in our episodes and maybe airdrop you some prizes.
Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the People's Guild. Another week, another episode. A very successful 100th episode last week. Thank you for everybody who turned up. It was a good time, I think, had by most. Yeah. Featured some of our favorite guests from over the years and had a surprise visit from Nate. A lot of fun. Go check it out if you haven't, if you didn't catch the live stream. Quick acknowledgements: Crypto Eater, Push and Shove, Aqualis. Cool stuff continues to happen over there. I know I think they're getting ready to shift from the proxy Aqualis token to real token, I believe. And swiftly coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, they got a new season, new trading season where people on the leaderboard for trading volume with at the Splinterlands market there will get extra rebates. So go check that out. Yeah.
Just in time for you to stock up on Lorcus there, hippie.
Yeah, man. I got a couple of BCX I got to buy. There's only like 2 in the market earlier today, and so I was like, all right, I'll wait. I think they were, wasn't terrible, but yeah, I got 4, so I'll probably try to get 2 more to get to that kind of gold level.
Sweet. Yeah. All right. Well, without further ado, we're checking in with you guys for our biannual visit from this man. He's one of our favorite guests. At this point, I think we can call him a regular guest. I don't know if he'll embrace that, but we'd love to embrace that. So welcome back to the People's Guild, Cryptomancer. Great to see you. Great to talk to you, man. How are you?
Thanks, guys. It's good to be back again. Yeah, I don't mind being called a regular. It's all good. Nice. I'm coming to you today from the sunny shores of the South China Sea. I'm in Kota Kinabalu on the Malaysian province of Sabah on Borneo Island. Beautiful weather here, and I have a wonderful view of the South China Sea right outside my window. We come here every few months. My family and I, we've got some real life land investments to look after here. So it's always a pleasure to visit Sabah.
That's awesome. Is it like a beach there, or is it kind of like a rocky coastline? What's the, kind of that transition from the shore to the water situation you got going there?
Now, they have some beautiful beaches here. It's amazing. Think Hawaii, but without the crowds. It's lovely.
Wow, that sounds nice. Any good surfing over there?
Not in this particular area. I think there are other parts of the coast where people do that, but not here. The water's nice and warm, though. Quite different from the Pacific coast in the Seattle area where I grew up. Over there, you would not want to go dipping in the water.
So how much longer, Cryptomancer, before the permanent address is in Borneo, man? I feel like that's got to be the next step for Cryptomancer and family.
Yeah, we keep jumping back and forth between here and Japan. I mean, I really like both countries. They're very different from each other, so it's fun to get a bit of variety on our trips when we transition. Takes a bit of getting used to the climate here. Whew, is it ever hot?
Yeah, humidity. I never experienced. I grew up in the desert, so when I first arrived to Southeast Asia and my first bout with real consistent humidity, holy moly, that was a wake-up call. I don't think you can ever prepare yourself, and I'm perpetually acclimatized to the dry, arid desert. So it's brutal, man. I can totally relate.
Yeah, it's nice being in like a dry climate so that when you sweat, it actually like evaporates and cools you down as like the functional mechanism that it's supposed to be, as opposed to just sitting there on your body and like it's even
Collecting more
more.
moisture.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
even like as soon as you walk out, you just feel like, oh, I'm in like a in a shower already. So yeah, fun
Yeah, I
times.
know what you mean. Seattle was very dry where I grew up, and then when I came to Japan and went through my first summer there, it was like, whoo, it takes some getting used to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Cryptomancer, I know Hep was curious to number one talk about conflicts and number two offer a bit of acknowledgement at the success of what conflicts have been thus far. Hep, you wanna kick us off
Yeah,
down that
just
path?
because, yeah, I mean, we last you were here, we were talking about it. You were getting it ready. It was kind of your baby at the time, and it's out in the world now. And yeah, I mean, I think it's been great. It seems like it's been universally well received in the community, which is, I don't know, is this the first time anything you guys have ever done has had such positive reviews? And yeah, so I just kind of wanted to know, what your thoughts are now that it's out there and it's been going, and everybody kind of really likes it.
I've been really pleased with conflict so far. I think it's going great, and it's really exciting every month to see that new card drop and play around with it and see people's reactions to it. And I think one of the things that I like the most about conflicts, which may be a bit underappreciated, I'm not sure, is simply the fact that I don't have to push a big red button every single time one of these comes out. Like before conflicts, the way the airdrops used to work, it was a very manual process, and they dropped at different times. So I'd wake up on airdrop day, and people would be like, "When airdrop? When
Yeah.
airdrop?" And I'd have like 20 DMs, and people would be like, "Is Cryptomancer awake yet? When's the airdrop?" And it was like a mad scramble to get that thing out. And sometimes we'd be a little bit late after the pack milestone passed, and and people are like 10 minutes after that milestone, they're like, "Where's the airdrop? Why is it not here yet?" And so one of the things I really love about conflicts is we don't have that big manual process anymore. It's all automatic. It all smoothly transitions from one to the next. It all happens at a set, well-defined time. And to me, that is just really, really awesome and a very nice improvement on the way the system used to work. So I don't have to see all those when airdrop messages anymore. Now,
Man, I didn't even
behind the
think of that.
scenes, behind the scenes, there's still a little bit of a scramble to get the cards prepared because the creative team only has like they don't have like all the cards lined up in advance. They only have like a month to do the artwork, and they have to talk to the winners that are actually the ones coming up with the ideas for the legendary summoners from the community, and to figure out how those can be turned into actual cards. And then we have Call Me Tim that has to come up with the stats for the cards. And he's been doing this thing where he's been introducing new abilities for the cards as we go along. And I think that's pretty cool, having a new ability for each new card. But that also takes a lot of work behind the scenes. So there's been a lot of pressure internally to meet these deadlines. And I think everyone on the team has been really happy that it's going as smooth as it is. We've kind of become a well-oiled machine, pumping these things out month after month. And it's really nice to see it all come together in such a neat package here.
You just kind of glossed over something there. Did you say we're getting new abilities per summoner? Did I hear that correctly?
I should be careful about that. So we've gotten new abilities on all the cards to date, but I think Call Me Tim is gonna slow down a little bit in that respect. I don't think there's gonna be an absolute guarantee of a new ability for each new card. There might be one or two more. I'm not really sure. It's kind of up in the air and depends a lot on how Call Me Tim wants to do things. So I'm not going to commit to anything regarding the new cards.
You heard it here first, folks. Yeah, no, we had Nate. Nate was on last week. He dropped in with us, was talking with us, and he brought up the fact too that yeah, it's a little bit of a rush to get the cards prepared, especially when Tim wants to put a new ability in because they kind of got to create the artwork for stuff like that too. And I'm interested to hear about it from your perspective or the dev side. What's that process like? When does he kind of come with you with, hey, I have this idea for an ability and here's how I think it should work? When you guys kind of have to code that and make sure it's kind of going to work with the gameplay and add that into the gameplay, what is that like? What's that process like? And how much kind of work does that take to get that new ability into the game?
So it happens in stages over the course of the month. From the idea phase all the way to the actual implementation. Actually, it takes quite a bit of time, and there's lots of play testing involved as well to make sure the abilities are balanced and mesh well with all the other cards. So typically what we try to do is make sure that the visual aspects are ready for the conflict rollover. So like now that the fifth conflict has started, you can see the stats for Cryptic. You can see his lore entry, his art, all of that stuff on the collection screen before the card is playable. So that's what we focus on making sure is ready for the start of the conflict. And then the actual coding for any new abilities can go on in the background before the card becomes playable. So like right now, the code for that new ability, Expose, I think it's called, the code for that isn't actually complete or finalized yet. Of course, that needs to be in place before the card becomes playable, but we still have another month before it's playable. So even while the creative team is getting ready to design the art for the next card, after that, coding is still going on for the abilities for Cryptic. So you have these different pieces happening at different times, and then we make sure that everything comes together at the end to be ready when it needs to be ready. And you have like the creative teams working on the art. Call Me Tim as the stats. There's another developer, Melon Man, that helps Call Me Tim with the battle coding. So he might be working on the abilities. Melon Man did a lot of the UI for the new tactics screens, for instance. And then you've got other people like myself who are involved on the conflict side. So I've been preparing the configuration for the new conflicts. And another one of our devs, Antioch, has been helping out with that as well. So it's really a team effort with lots of people involved across the whole team to make sure that these things work. It's not just one guy from start to finish that cranks these things out.
Well,
and of course, all of that has to happen in parallel with other major projects that are going on at the same time. So it's a lot of multitasking and contextual switching back and forth as we go along from thing to thing.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of wondering, like how much of your day does it kind of eat up, or how much can you devote to other stuff as well? When if you've got to like add a new ability in, is that something like, well, we're going to work on it, half the day and do other stuff half the day, and does that time fluctuate based on, when the card's about, gets closer to its release date?
Yeah, that's kind of what happens. Like I'll look at the calendar and I'll be like, oh, conflict rollover is coming up in another couple of weeks, so we got to start getting this ready. So I'll devote like a day or two to working on the config and testing new conflict, and then I'll go back to whatever I was working on previously. And that tends to work out pretty well. I mean, these things don't take up a whole lot of time away from other projects. And overall, I'd say it's been reasonably smooth, aside from some of those last minute scrambles where it's like, oh, new ability, we need a new icon, quick, Nate, bring out the art. But aside from that, I mean, it's going pretty well. I'm really happy with how well everyone on the team is working together. and we've got a really nice seasoned veteran team now, where each team member has a lot of experience, and so we kind of naturally mesh well with each other, and we know what needs to be done and what needs to be handed off to other people and whatnot. So that whole part of things, I think, is really going smoothly, and that's kicked into high gear now that everyone is seasoned.
Nice. Yeah, I'm curious about this new ability too, because it's it's interesting. We're seeing something that it's removing old abilities that were there before, right? It's not like something completely. It is completely new in that sense, but it's not like it's um, something that was new. I mean, with Venka, the attack from anywhere was kind of we had that as a rule set. Um, and with Kai, it had, it was kind of similar to having, but it kind of did a reduce by one. But this is something where it's just kind of removing or taking away abilities that are already there. So is that, does that make it more or less complicated that it's kind of just, well, we just have to kind of prevent a card from doing something or acting a certain way, as opposed to adding something completely entirely different that's into the game now?
Well, I think there's a couple different complications depending on your perspective. All right, so from the player's perspective, you've got possible cognitive overload that you need to be careful about. From the coding perspective, um, all of the abilities are implemented in different ways, and they apply in different phases of the battle. So, like the battle engine is like a giant flowchart. Like, okay, when we start phase one, is this ability being used? If yes, go over here, do these checks. If not, go down this other branch and now apply this next ability. And so it's like a giant series of decisions that get made, and you have to go through all of that and see where are these abilities being applied. What do we need to do to take each of them away, and how does that affect things? So there's a lot of nuances in the coding. It's not as easy as just saying, okay, turn off all these abilities. you,
Yeah.
you have to, yeah, it's a bit more complicated than that.
Yeah,
Um,
it's interesting too because we were talking about that cognitive thing. I was reading it and I was like, oh, it takes away cleanse, but then there's part like, well, it can also when it takes something away, it can be cleansed, but then it can only be cleansed unless the monster has cleansed. But the cleanse can be removed from the monster, so they can't cleanse itself. And I was like, I'm gonna have to read this a second time to kind of wrap my head around it. So yeah,
so some abilities are very easy to implement, and other abilities are a bit trickier. Um, so it can vary pretty wildly from ability to ability how much effort is involved.
yeah.
Yeah, it feels like, without any existing knowledge of what coding looks like, it feels like expose is possibly one of the more challenging abilities that you guys have put into place, because I know it's set up to expose and remove immunity first, and then my understanding is when the reverse is happening and the opponent is cleansing Grim Bardoon, for example, and reinstating immunity, that's the first to be cleansed and come back. Is that have I understood that correctly, Cryptomancer?
I'm not 100% sure on that myself. So I'm not actually doing the coding for expose. I think that's Melon Man and Call Me Tim. But I have done ability coding in the past. For like, I coded the new abilities for Chaos Legion and did Bloodlust for the Gladiators and stuff like that. So I'm familiar with the battle engine in general. And my guess would be that this is one of the more tricky ones.
Yeah. What is the testing period look like? So we've got a month between now and when Cryptic hits ground in Praetoria and becomes playable in game. How soon are we trying to get this card with potentially uh big implications by way of this brand new ability into test servers, and what kind of I would assume a fairly rigorous test would be required to make sure it's not breaking other things, and we're not seeing ripples across onto impacting other abilities. So what is that? What does that and what should that look like in your mind, Cryptomancer?
So the way testing works is first, when something is being coded, the individual developer tests it in their local development environment, which is like a completely self-contained sandbox environment on their own individual computer. So they try it out and make sure that their code actually works. And then once the developer is satisfied and happy that their code works and they don't think it has any bugs, then it goes into internal QA. And we actually have 4 different internal QA servers that are not open to the public that we do internal testing on. So Cryptic will hit one of those servers and he'll go through internal testing. And that's when we have various team members try it out, and it goes through the official QA process. And that's when everyone tries out very exhaustively all the different things that can be done, and see if there are any bugs or if there are any balancing changes that need to be made. And all of that goes on before anyone from the public, from the player community, can get a crack at it. So once internal testing is complete, then for big projects, we put them up on the Mavs server, and that's when it becomes open to the public. For smaller things like for these airdrop cards, sometimes they don't even make it to the public testing. We just keep it internal and then release it once we're satisfied that it's passed internal processing. So really, when someone goes on the Mavs server, by the time something has hit Mavs, it's typically already been very well tested internally. And the UI design is all finalized at that point. Everything is basically finished. And what we look for in Mavs testing is are there any last minute bugs that maybe escaped our attention during internal testing? Sometimes players think of things that we didn't think of, or they try things in ways that we didn't anticipate. But mostly the Mav server is basically just like a reward for being a Maverick. It's kind of one of the perks of being a Mav, being able to see some of the big major things early before they get pushed out. All of the actual official testing typically happens on the internal private servers.
Gotcha. One of the big things, especially with this new ability, and new abilities in general, is seeing how they act in certain rule sets. And this one, I know the page specifically called out, oh, this is going to be a big one in noxious fume rule sets. And so I guess wondering, the internal testing servers you guys have, do you guys have the ability to kind of set the rule sets to certain things? And so you can see, like, let's run a bunch of different noxious fume rule set matches to see how this works at certain monocap levels or anything, or is it still all kind of randomized on your thing as well? You just have to say, we just got to run a bunch of battles and see, hopefully we randomly get that as a rule set and to see and pay attention to how it reacts there.
We have full control over those environments. So we do sometimes do things like that. There are ways that we can say, okay, only this particular rule set is going to be used, or only these particular conditions are going to be available. So yeah, we do set up specific test cases like that from time to time when we need to. Easier than waiting for 50 random battles and hoping you get the right thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, Vet V, if you're listening, that one's for you, buddy. Cryptomancer, I don't know if you.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, we had Vet V on a couple of weeks ago, a couple episodes back, and I'm sure you've seen throughout Mavs the kitchen table game mode for all kind of chant from Vet, and we're kind of in the background working on putting together a little bit of a proposal to see if we can go about securing funding for that sort of development and allowing for something like that, maybe accessible through something like a battle pass or pay to have access to this sort of fully customizable environment. So the fact that it's possible and you guys embrace it, I think bodes well for this proposal to come. Stay tuned.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm wondering, if it's if you guys have that, you have it kind of already, how hard is it, or how much work would it be to just make that available to everyone in some format. Not
Well,
necessarily
when I
internal
say
testing, but like be able to do with what's out there, what's already out, released, and everything.
Well, when I say we have that, I'm thinking more along the lines of like people going in and modifying database configuration to forcing the game to work in a certain way. We don't have like a polished UI screen where you can set all the choices and options and things like that. So certainly we don't have anything that could be public facing in that regard. But I have long wanted to see more options added to things like challenge matches and practice matches, and it really wouldn't be that hard. From a technical point of view, there's no great challenge in adding more customization and flexibility to things like that. I think some of the reasons we haven't done that in the past have to do with being hesitant about empowering bots. Like, we don't want bots to be able to train themselves by setting up certain battle conditions and then just running like challenge matches over and over and over again against themselves. So that may
Sure.
be one reason why we've hesitated in the past and to allow that sort of thing. But I think there's probably some kind of fine balance that can be struck. I mean, there's always going to be things that we can do to guard against bots if we're willing to take those steps.
Beautiful. Well, hopefully it, I think the community has long been chomping at the bit, and I'm sure both as developer and player, would find great joy in, you don't have to wait, like you said, 50 matches to test out Lorcus and XYZ rule sets. It certainly makes for great streamer content. Being able to, hey, we're gonna test Lorcus to its full capacity today on stream, and kind of tee up a handful of cool battles with fun rule sets that really play well to Lorcus's ability kit.
Even if you give us a button that's no back to basics, I think that would go a long way. So.
I would pay all the vouchers in the world to rid ourselves of back to basics, Cryptomancer.
Absolutely, I can see the appeal in that.
Well, cool, man. Let's circle back to the conflict stuff. So we had like we've called out a couple of times. We had Nate on last week, and we're kind of talking about the future of conflicts. We've heard a number of times since conflicts came into existence that this is really just the beginnings of conflicts. Even when we had you on 6 months ago, Cryptomancer, you had a little bit of a different vision for what conflicts would ultimately look like when they were rolled out for Rebellion. And obviously we had some hiccups, and conflicts got pushed a couple of weeks. Where do you kind of see the future of conflicts, and how kind of wide reaching, I mean outside of Rebellion, how wide reaching can we, kind of, is the sky the limit with conflicts? Can we reach as far back as like alpha beta stuff? And yeah, I'd just love to hear your thoughts on, if you have any at all, what could conflicts look like moving forward post Rebellion?
So I want to be a little bit careful here. I don't want to step on Nate's toes too much and presume to know what his plans are exactly. And I want to make clear that this is complete speculation on my part. There are no absolute definite plans whatsoever at this point, other than we do want to do something else with conflicts in the future. So going back, first, let's go back in time 6 or 7 months to when I was still coding conflicts. Now, originally, when the whole project started, Nate presented me with this really awesome detailed plan that included so much extra stuff that we ended up cutting from the initial release. And I came up with a technical spec for the entire complete original plan, and that included some really neat things like some extra stats for the cards. Cards would have things like defense, stamina. I think there are a couple other stats. And conflicts would actually be a form of passive battles where the cards would attack other cards, and you could have the cards like temporarily knocked out and stop contributing their points to conflicts if they suffer too much damage. and you would have different like environmental conditions that would change every week, which would affect how the conflicts play out. And then you'd have to kind of rejigger your cards and adjust your wagon configurations to deal with these different conditions that would pop up. And so there was a bit of a bit more management involved in the original plan, and some different variables and factors that would go into things. And I thought it was an amazing plan. I prepared a technical spec. I was all ready to start coding that technical spec. And then we decided to pare it down and remove some of those things so that we could launch conflicts faster. Like originally, it probably would have taken until maybe February to get it ready following the full plan. And we didn't want to wait that long. So we went ahead with a more minimal version of the plan. So at some point in the future, it's possible that we may go back and revisit the original plan. I mean, we've still got the completely worked out technical specification just sitting on a shelf waiting for somebody to code it. So it wouldn't be too hard to start adding in some of those things. And that could be some future iteration of conflicts, maybe for the next set, perhaps. I also see them being used in lots of different areas. It could be a whole big PvE aspect. So you could have a questing system where you go on quests in different areas around Pretoria and different locations. And maybe you'd have to send your wagons to a particular spot, like go to the dark forest and search out the hidden treasure, but oh no, it's being guarded by these elves, so you have to commit your wagons and defeat the elves to get the treasure. So there's all sorts of things that we could do like that with passive quests. And it could also be used for boss fights as well. Like perhaps a certain location opens up on the map at a certain time, and you have to go and participate in the boss fights by staking all your cards. So there's all sorts of things that we can do that also tie into the land expansion in various ways. Now, I don't know for sure when or if we're going to get to any of those things, but we would like to do something more with conflicts in the future. And sky's the limit, really, as far as what all kind of areas they can be applied to.
Yeah, I would love to see. We kind of very briefly opened up the idea of I love the idea of kind of communal efforts being brought into conflict. So maybe like a choose your own adventure type experience where there's some lore put forth by Joey and Co. and the community has to choose sides, and based on which group of wagons uh sees the greater number of staked monsters, it's kind of going to dictate what does that next chapter of lore look like, and just having the community play an integral part in kind of the shaping and the future of this story, I think would be really, really cool. But yeah, all of this stuff sounds fascinating, man. I hope that we really dig into conflicts and kind of unlock the full potential of everything that you just mentioned. It sounds incredible. Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. It's a whole new passive game mode and a really interesting way that we can expand on the core gameplay, I think.
Yeah, and it also kind of, encourage people to have, full versions of each card and build out your set. Like have a purpose to build out the set, even if it's you don't feel like maybe you need a card specifically for certain gameplay. In ranked battles, it maybe provides a utility for that asset in other places as well, which would be a lot of fun.
Yep, I like seeing utility for things in different areas. The more, the better.
Yeah, I mean, so maybe you guys haven't thought about this. Like Ben said, is it possible that when these different sort of passive game modes come online, is it going to be just kind of cards that are in modern? Will give some utility to some older cards as well?
there's nothing stopping us from expanding the conflict system to older cards as well. We made the choice to only allow rebellion cards to be staked for now because it's the rebellion airdrop system. But it's a general mechanism that can be used for really any type of card. So it would be very easy to remove that restriction and use different types of cards for different types of events in the future. So I could definitely see it being used for more than just rebellion cards, depending on the context and what we want to do there.
Cool. Well, we got about 6 months of conflicts left, right? I think we've got 5 summoners to go. 6
Yeah,
summoners
we're about halfway through. Yep.
halfway through, and time sure flies. I spoke. You have inherited a fair bit of the land project, and we were talking a little bit off air around, kind of this veteran dev team that you guys have managed to put together and keep together for the last little while, and how well you think things are going. Let's kind of crack that open and dive into what's the happening on land. How are you feeling about everything? I know you're working on prefix titles. We just rolled out the trade hub for grain and DEC LPs. Yeah, I'll turn it over to you, Cryptomancer. Why don't you kind of guide us down your line of thought with land?
All right, so land, I'm tremendously excited about land. I remain very passionate about land, and I'm looking forward to land 2.0 just as much as all of you guys. And first, I want to just make sure that I kind of resolve any concerns that some community members might have about Farpatrod leaving the team. So some people might be thinking, oh no, Farpatrod's gone. What's happening with land? Is land still happening? Has it completely stopped? Are we dead in the water? What's going on? So I want to assure everyone that land continues. It's still progressing smoothly, I think. When Farpatrod left, yeah, okay, there was a little bit of a scramble to figure out who was going to be doing what, and we had to look at the code that he was working on and figure it out and whatnot, but it didn't really cause any massive disruptions at all. Land is not just one person, it's bigger than that. I was talking earlier about how there's lots of different team members involved in working on the Conflicts airdrop cards. Land is no different. There's lots of different team members involved in land. Going forward, we're not just going to have like one dedicated guy and nobody else working on land. It's a real team effort, like everything else that we do. There's going to be different people working on different pieces at different times, and it's all going to fit together to produce this whole big land expansion. So since Farpatrod left, Investigator has taken on the grain LPs, and he's really done a fantastic job of finishing that off and getting it launched. And I myself have taken over the prefix title work. So that was the big thing that I was working on for the last month and a half or so. And as you've noticed, prefix titles is now on the Mavs server. And it's basically done at this point. I've finished coding the prefix titles. I'm satisfied that it's working okay. And now the community has a chance to play around with it a little bit before launch. So as usual these days, we don't talk about launch dates anymore. So I'm not going to give a specific date for prefix titles to go out. But
you stole the next question from me, Cryptomancer.
The coding is done. It's in Mavs QA. I myself am confident there are no bugs, so you can read into that what you will in regards to a release date coming up. Now that prefix titles is done, I've already moved on to another land-related project. So I'm starting to work on making it possible to use delegated and rented cards as land workers. I think that's something that a lot of people will be interested in, and it should be a fairly impactful change. It's also not a huge project. It's not as big as like the prefix titles or the Rain LPs. So that's something else that will probably be coming in the somewhat near term. There's a few little things like that we're working on finishing up, and that constitutes what we've been loosely calling like land 1.5 or 1.6. And then after those last few little things are done, then we're going to move on to planning for land 2.0. And it's not immediately clear how the pieces of land 2.0 are going to come together yet, as we have to do some thinking about how exactly that's going to work, like especially how we're going to transition into those new land features. Like, for instance, we're going to have to think about storage. So on land 2.0, there's storage requirements for grain. So, like, what do we do with all the millions of grain that everybody has now? Does that just get grandfathered in with no storage requirements? How do we handle that? So there's lots of transition type things like that we need to think about going into land 2.0.
Cryptomancer, can we dive into the delegated rented cards piece? I think it does speak to a pretty significant impact in terms of the rental market for cards. So right now we've got the option of kind of daily rentals. We've got the option for seasonal rentals. Are we expecting kind of a different option for something like land? Like as a card lord, renting cards out, would I have the option to kind of allow for an indefinite rental sort of thing?
So the way the rental market itself works won't be changing. There will still be daily rentals and seasonal rentals. There will be some constraints on what types of rentals can be used for land workers. So right now we're looking at making it so that you can only use seasonal rentals for land. The reason being, we don't want there to be too much churn with daily rentals. There's the possibility that people might like rent something, cancel it, only rent it for a day, whatever, and then that causes a lot of extra processing on the system, because every time a rental or a delegation gets pulled, that forces a land harvest and a staking change. So you don't want all this extra processing being done all the time for cards being yanked off of land. So we are looking at making it so you can only use seasonal rentals on land. But that's subject to change, of course. It's still early in the project, and I'm just getting started on the coding. So depending on how internal testing goes, that may change. But that's what we're looking at right now. And there will be no restrictions on plain old delegations that are not rentals. So if you wanted to, you could delegate cards to an alt that you want to use for land, and that would work just fine with no restrictions.
That also opens up the opportunity for kind of P2P, quote unquote rentals, right? Like I can, work with somebody on Discord and come to an agreement where, you delegate me ABC cards and I'll pay you XYZ DEC daily for using said cards on land. Is there the plan for a 3-day cooldown to continue to exist for cards pulled off of land from delegations and rental cards?
Oh yes, the cooldown period won't be affected, so that'll remain the same. One thing that I've been thinking about that's a little bit tricky is how to handle notifications. Like when delegations and rentals end, if you get a lot of cards yanked off your land plots, you probably want to replace them pretty quickly. So we're thinking about how exactly to notify the user when that happens. And for now, it'll probably just be an expansion of the existing notifications that exist for delegations and rentals. Now, you don't want to see like a million notifications popping up for every single card. Like if 500 cards get pulled, you don't want to have to click on 500 different notifications. So it's it's tough trying to think of a nice way to handle that. And we're probably going to have to make some kind of UX compromise there until ultimately what we need is an entirely new notification system. But that's a whole other project somewhere down the line.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you guys have made pretty good progress in the last couple months on the land. So that's great. Have things been, so since land came out, had these additional projects, do you feel like the way the original land was kind of coded and built out, these kind of things have been a little bit easier and running a little bit smoother?
Yeah, I think things have matured a lot since the original days of land. Um, Land was by far the biggest project that we ever attempted for the game. And we had some teething pains when it first started because of that. It was tough trying to figure out how to effectively manage a project of that size. And I think we've gotten better at it as time goes on. And these days, it feels like things are much smoother and we're making pretty rapid progress. I mean, May is basically the month of land. We have the grain LP come out, prefix titles are on the way. We got this new delegation and rental feature that's coming. Miscellaneous assorted minor fixes here and there. So I feel like land is moving along at a pretty good pace in between the other projects that we have in the works. And I hope to see that pace continue as we move into land 2.0.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, it's tough. The community, it feels like as a whole, I hesitate to kind of call out the negativity around like what has the team delivered lately and where's land at, but it's tough not to see some of that stuff. But when you zoom out and you look at, I think we kind of need to divide the life of Splinterlands into to two parts, and the most recent part beginning when Yaba took over in, gosh, I guess September now, better part of a year ago at this point. Um, and the amount of development that you guys have rolled out, whether it's UX stuff or little bits and pieces of land or um, Rebellion, in retrospect, you guys have churned out a very significant volume of dev stuff. How are you guys feeling about the coming months? Are we going to be kind of able to maintain this pace? Or uh, are we feeling some? Are you guys feeling some kind of pressure to really deliver on this stuff as soon as possible?
Well, I think there is some pressure to deliver. There's always pressure to deliver on things. I mean, it doesn't feel good to look at Discord and see some of the grumbling and complaints in there. There's some good vibes too, but generally, I've been a bit less active in Discord myself these days because I want to focus on all of the good work that we're doing and less on what some people are saying in Discord. Um, and I feel pretty good about things myself. I think we're on a roll. We've made a really good series of rollouts over the first half of the year so far. And I think that pace is going to continue for the second half of the year. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't. There's no big technical showstoppers in the way. We're smacking things down one after the other, task by task. The whole team is firing on all cylinders. It's a well-oiled engine. And I think internally there's a lot of excitement and passion for what we're doing. It's really awesome to see all these pieces start to come together. So I think in Discord there's a few people that are maybe more outspoken than everyone else that are making a lot of noise, and that's unfortunate to see. But I don't think that noise is really connected to reality very much. Um, there's naysayers that are screaming FUD all the time, but I don't see any real reason to justify that FUD. From my point of view, internally working on the team, everything is going great. and we're being very productive and getting things done, and that's what's important at the end of the day.
Well, Cryptomancer, but before we move on, man, yeah, I want to acknowledge the team in general. It feels like, despite all the FUD, despite all the negativity, you guys continue to bring energy, to bring passion. I think, well, we called it out last week, and I think it was pretty much the consensus sentiment around the Nate and Gate show that was a town hall a couple of weeks ago. There wasn't a whole lot of substance, but it was so much fun. And just seeing that consistent passion from guys like Nate and Gator, I think really goes a long way. So yeah, kudos to you guys for being able to put those blinders on, focus where you guys need to, and just continue to churn out the good stuff that's going to take us to the promised land, man. I had a thought a second ago, and I'd love to kind of revisit this idea with you, Cryptomancer. You, at some point, I want to say it was probably about a year ago when we were first starting to really sink our teeth into the development of land and kind of hashing out all of the associated white papers and doing the technical specs for what this stuff could look like. You gave an analogy around the size and scope of the project that is Praetoria versus everything else that you guys had contributed to into production on the game previously. Do you happen to have that analogy handy? And if not, can you give us a good idea of? Yeah, I think you likened it to like a blue whale versus like a flounder or something like that. And I'd love to put some visual out there for both for ourselves and for the community, the listeners, just so we have kind of a reminder of how massive this project, this undertaking actually is.
I don't remember the exact analogy that I used at the time, but yeah, something like that sounds pretty accurate. So the land project itself is probably bigger than the whole rest of the game put together. So if the game is Earth, then land is, I don't know, maybe like Jupiter. It's pretty big. And when we first started working on land, I mean, there was some sense that it was going to be a really large project, but I don't think we realized at the time just how large and how involved it was going to be. So we were unfortunately wildly optimistic in the original timelines that were given. And of course, that's why we don't give timelines so much anymore. It's better not to put particular expectations in people's minds. But the analogy that you used, I think, is a pretty good one, like a giant whale compared to a little porpoise or something.
We've talked with Joey, and we brought it up on the podcast a number of times about how he's kind of been putting out on X that he's, at the end of the day, kind of like the things he's working on and the things some his group is working on. Has that been discussed, or has that, thought of expanding that to sort of like your area as well and the devs as well, to kind of maybe would kind of ease some people's concerns, or like you said, people don't really know what's going on and they're just kind of spitting salt in Discord, but would it help to have a little more transparency about, no, this is like what we've been accomplished or what we've been accomplishing on a day basis. I don't know if you're aware of that Joey was doing that, or if you've seen it, or if you thought about kind of putting out something like that similar.
That's not something that I myself was personally aware of, but it's a great effort. I think that's a cool thing to be doing. I'm not sure how much more transparent we can really be about dev efforts, though. I mean, we've got the town halls where we talk about everything that's going on. And then we give updates from time to time in Discord about what various people are doing and show teasers and sneak peeks of things. So I think we're already being pretty transparent. And it's hard to say how we could do any better than that without like sticking a video camera on the dev's shoulder and peeking over their shoulders as they type. And
well,
it
Cryptomancer, it's time to submit the expense report for some GoPros, man.
Yeah, I mean, you don't all want to be too too invasive and micromanagerial as well.
Yeah.
Like if you start telling the devs, okay, you got to tell people what you're working on every single day, it adds a lot of overhead to things as well. So I think we're being about as transparent as we can be without it becoming a burden to us.
Yeah, that's fair. I wonder, Cryptomancer, have you taken a look at the Splinterlands on X community on Twitter, the app formerly known as Twitter? Are you involved over there at all?
I have not myself. I don't even have a Twitter account. It's actually a point of pride that I try to stay away from Twitter entirely. I'd rather just focus my time on coding. I tend to stay off social media as much as I can.
I was gonna try and twist your arm there, Cryptomancer, and vouch for it's very much a dichotomy of two worlds between Discord and Twitter. I feel like Twitter is by and large a much more positive environment. Guys like Brave Tofu and Gold Matter is really kind of spearheading the way to help there's a handful of guys that really take to the streets on Twitter and kind of play Splinterlands evangelist to the best of their ability. So shout out to those guys. And if you're ever willing to swallow your pride and come over to Twitter, man, I'm sure you would have a very warm welcome. So just an offer I'm throwing out there.
Interesting observation there. I think Twitter's probably good for outreach to the wider crypto community as well. Discord is good for the community that we already have.
Also true. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. So yeah, we talk about, stuff you talk about in town halls. And I guess one of the things Matt had talked about a while ago was that, they were really focused on sort of enhancing the user gameplay experience, and that he almost made it seem like LAN was taking a little bit of a back seat to that. Did that kind of change once the revamp to the ranking system, which I know, was not finished and not finalized. So I'll say since that got first rolled out, I know I'll use my words carefully there. I know Nate was very poignant about that last week. So since that initial rollout of that, was it after that where, some of these tasks sort of got a little more focus, or were things kind of moving in parallel on both the LAN side and then those sort of user gameplay sides?
I don't think priorities have really shifted at all. We're still very much focused on the player experience and improving that and making the game easier for new players to get into. That remains a big focus for the year. LAN was always moving along in parallel with the new player experience. And I think earlier in the year, the progress on the LAN just wasn't as visible externally to people. When Farpatrod left, he was already pretty far along with both prefix titles and the grain LPs. So really, myself and Investigator, we just took what he had already done and then applied a level of polish and ironed out some of the kinks to really get it into a production-ready state. So it just so happened that the grain LPs and the prefix titles, it all kind of came to fruition at about the same time, which is why you're seeing so much land activity, public-facing land activity in the month of May. That just happened to be when it was all ready. But I don't think there's been there hasn't really been an increased focus or a decreased focus on land. There's just been kind of a constant, steady, it's continuing to make progress as we go along. So there will be periods of time where that progress will be more noticeable or less noticeable, depending on what phase we're in. Once some of the last LAN 1.5, 1.6 type things are out, then you're probably going to see a quiet period again where there's not much noticeable stuff going on. But behind the scenes, we'll be busy planning out LAN 2.0, and Nate's team will be cranking out the artwork, and the devs will be looking at how to actually code it all and put it all together. So it will probably be a while before there's much to show off publicly beyond the artwork that Nate shows in the town halls. But that doesn't mean that progress is not being made. It just means there's no finished product to show you guys yet.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, if land, kind of where we're at with land now is Jupiter compared to Earth, what is land 2.0 going to be then? The scope of that and the amount of work that's going to have to go to that, is that we talking about we're looking at a, galaxy size project.
I don't think it's actually as bad as that. Um, the original land launch kind of laid a lot of the foundations. So we've already got the process in place for managing resources and doing harvests and all the accounting type tasks like that. And for Land 2.0, we're going to be adding a lot of new resources. So that just expands the existing system with additional resources. So that shouldn't be a huge amount of extra work. There will be some work involved with the new buildings and some of the ways that they interact with things. But I don't think it's going to be as bad as people might think initially.
Okay,
because we've already built out a lot of the foundation that's involved. And one of the reasons that foundation took so long to build in the first place was that we were trying to think ahead to Land 2.0 and make sure that the foundation was flexible and could be extended in ways that naturally fit in with Land 2.0. Because we don't want to have to rebuild everything from scratch again. We want to use what's been done so far, leverage that, and then expand it with the new features.
So you're talking about, the main focus of the year is still on, player experience and new player experience and ease of kind of, introducing new players to the game. So, kind of where are we, what kind of tasks are you guys working on that angle? Is it just kind of focusing on tweaks to the, the rank reward system, or is there something, new that's in the works, that you guys are working on?
I haven't been so involved in that project myself, so I can't really give you a good amount of detail on that. But I know they want to continue evolving the ranked battle system, tweaking things and adjusting as we go along. There's going to be some more academy pages added here and there, so you can expect to see more from the academy tutorial system in the future. Probably some other things as well, but I don't have all the details at this moment.
Okay. Who's kind of focused on that aspect?
I know an investigator and Antioch have been really involved in that. They've been kind of leading the charge on it so far.
I saw Royal Eagle posted a pretty substantial message in Discord the other day, a couple days ago at this point, and he kind of listed out, I guess, for lack of a better term, an unofficial roadmap. Uh, Obviously, no dates attached, but what's currently being worked on, what's kind of next up and in design, and then further out, down the path a little bit. But man, you guys have so much on your plates right now. So just on the list of actively being worked on, and what you've already touched on is land prefix titles, the rental stuff, rental cards, delegated cards, but also glint shop, gold foil draws, validators, one-click rentals. I think we kind of continually forget that there's a new reward card set that's kind of getting brewed up at the moment. There's an SPS audit happening with Claiborne, QA side of the of Splinterlands for Soulkeep related stuff. You guys are man, you guys have so many irons in the fire at the moment. So it's really encouraging to hear that you are feeling so positive about everything. And something that I noticed that was missing from this, and I know that you've kind of called out. I guess it's been a little while since we had a visit from Cryptomancer on a town hall. But I seem to remember the last time we heard from you on town hall, you were talking about uh, kind of your excitement around the idea of revisiting guilds and brawls. Is that something that has kind of been set aside with Farpatrod's exit and your inheritance of land stuff? Is there still some some effort coming from you towards guilds and brawls? Where are we on that stuff?
There certainly is a lot going on in guilds and brawls. Is definitely one area that I'd really like to revisit at some point. There's not a lot going on there right now. We've kind of had to deprioritize the plans for guilds and brawls. So initially, there were a lot of changes we were going to do there, and introducing guild power was kind of the first step of it. And then there were going to be some new guild buildings and things that you could do with your crowns and staking things into guilds and whatnot. So all that additional stuff is kind of on the back burner for now. We'd still like to get to it at some point, but I'm not sure exactly when that's going to be. The tech modernization effort is another complicating factor that you didn't mention that's also going along with all these other things that we're doing. So right now, one of our front end guys, Mancio, is working on porting tournaments over to the tech modernization client. And after he's done with tournaments, he's probably going to be starting on the guild pages. And that's going to be a pretty large effort. Those are some of the most complicated pages in the game. So we probably don't want to do too much around guilds before it gets ported over to the tech modernization client. Once tech modernization is finished off and everything is moved over there, then we'll have a bit more freedom to play around with things and see how we want to adjust layouts and add in new stuff. But we don't really want to do the work twice. So we don't want to make a lot of changes to the old client and then have to make the same changes again once it's been ported over to the tech modernization. So we got to be careful there and take that into account. There are some low-hanging fruit type things that we can do for guilds. I think there were a couple suggestions on a town hall recently that I thought were pretty good ideas. But I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to revisit guild stuff at this point. Eventually, that's all I can really say for now.
And I'm sure the ideas are always bouncing around in your head, right? Cryptomancer, I know you've definitely got a lot of ideas and like to think about a lot of stuff with guilds. So I'm sure you're always, mentally working on it, right? Even if you're not getting the chance to kind of lay stuff out or code it, right?
Yeah, I've always really liked the guilds aspect of the game, and as you may know, that's one of the things that I was primarily responsible for a couple of years ago, building that all out and developing the brawl system. So it remains one of my core areas of interest, and I definitely hope I can get back to it at some point.
Yeah, it's fun. I feel like it's, even though maybe it's, hasn't changed all that much, since you first got it out, I feel like it still remains one of the top parts of the game that people like to engage with and find, fun and entertaining. So I think it's I can't wait to see some new stuff to it, but I think, at its core, it's definitely still one of the more popular game mechanics we have.
Yeah, I always have fun going into the Brawl channel on Discord and seeing all the guilds trash talking each other and talking down and saying, "Hey, I beat you guys good." And it's fun to see the competitive spirit that people bring to brawling.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, even Ben's been doing pretty well in his brawls recently, so it's been good. I don't think you've gotten benched in a while, have you?
I got benched 2 brawls ago, but
Is it
thanks,
two?
Adam.
Oh,
You
okay.
tried. I've managed to hold my ground the last couple.
Nice.
And if I can get a 50% win rate in brawls, then I'm pretty happy. They're pretty tough these days.
Yeah. I had my first clean sweep last two brawl. I think has I done two in a row. Maybe it's been two in a row. I've been on a
I
tear.
think I saw you
Nice.
get 2 in a row.
Yeah, I think I got two in a row. So I'm sure I'll do terrible this time around, especially now that I said that out loud, let
You
alone
jinxed
on the
yourself
podcast.
officially.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Just whip out the Lorcus, go to town with him, see what you can do.
Yeah, I got to get him leveled up. I don't know if I'll get him leveled up in the next 43 hours. We'll see. We'll see what the prices are in the market.
So Cryptomancer, let's shift gears a little bit. And you as let's put on the player hat, the Praetorian citizen hat. What are you super excited about in the coming months, man? What are you most looking forward to? And Yeah, let's start there.
Well, to answer that in one word, land. Land has always been the thing that I'm probably the most excited about in the entire game. I love land. I love working my plots. I want to start cranking out some more resources. So everything that we can do, that we can roll out for land, is something I'm super excited about. And
Are
of
you
course, I'm also
continuing?
eager to see what's going to happen with conflicts after Rebellion ends. So I'll be interested to hear what kind of ideas Nate's got kicking around for that.
Yeah, likewise. Are you continuing to kind of play the card market and shop around for cards on for good deals to put on land? Or are you at a place where you feel like you're a massive region holder? Correct me if I'm wrong, but you've got three regions, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I've got 3 regions, and I can only effectively work about a third of that land. So I've got about 1,000 plots being utilized right now. Um, I'm pretty much done collecting cards for the time being, just because I don't have much else left to throw into the card market at this point. I've already got like a legion of maxed out reward cards. I've got all of my alpha and beta and untamed working on the land plots. So I continue to add to it here and there in little dribs and drabs as I go along. But for the time being, I'm pretty satisfied with where I'm at. Land is definitely the long game. So it's probably going to be years and years before I manage to get every single plot up and running there. And even getting a third of my land up and running was a Herculean effort. And I'm pretty happy with the way it's going.
Man, sir, I was just gonna say 1,000 plots is nothing to snub your nose at, man. That is a massive, massive undertaking. I was proud of myself for getting 7 plots up and running. And then I look at guys like you and Vugtis and Matt Clark, uh, manning 100x what I'm doing. And you guys are not even halfway through to the finish line.
Oh, Bugdus is in a league of his own. I'm definitely not trying to compete with him. If I'm like an orca, he's like the next level up. He's the true whale of the game. But I'm beating Yabatmat in research, so that's a win in my book. That's my goal. As long as I'm ahead of him in research, I'm doing good.
Nice, man. Yeah, the research thing, I think a lot of us are kind of waiting with bated breath to see it's been a while since we've heard the words Secret of Praetoria. I think everybody's just kind of silently doing their due diligence, nose to the grindstone with collecting research and pulling it up. I've somehow managed to maintain my position as, I believe, top 30, top 40
Oh wow.
in my respective
Nice.
territory with my meager 7 plots. So my preparation, I think, has paid off. I'm kind of anxious to get the soulbound card unlocking details onto airwaves, at which point I think I'll be ramping up my efforts a little bit further. But otherwise, yeah, like you say, it's definitely the long game. I don't know what else in the short term I can really do. I think most of my additional funds I have been going through, and I'll be curious to hear your take and how you've been interacting with cards like Untamed and Dice. I have been kind of bolstering my silver account with some absolute smoking deals that I have found on Untamed cards. I just, as an example, I very recently purchased my very first llama. I got a level 2 llama, which is awesome. I got it for $30 a BCX, and yeah, it's so satisfying to get that I've got an alpha flesh golem that pairs very nicely, as you well know, with
Nice.
the fabled um scarred llama mage. And I've
Oh,
also
got escape from Matt Clark. Don't let
yeah.
him know. He'll be coming after you for it.
Oh, I shared it with him immediately. As I purchased the flesh golem months and months ago, and I popped back into the 101 Discord a couple of weeks ago with the update that I've got the llama to go with the alpha flesh golem. But yeah, I also got a level 2 Krallis one of the greats. So yeah, I'm curious, how are you kind of interacting with the card market? Are you kind of picking up bits and pieces to max out older sets, or are you just kind of sitting idly by and watching what's happening? What's your take on the previous card editions?
Well, when it comes to land plots, I'm focusing exclusively on maxed out Chaos Legion reward cards. I basically try to get the most bang for my buck in terms of production points because I have so many plots and so many cards that I need to fill them all. So I'm satisfied with my older cards. The Alpha Beta is Untamed. I've got enough of those to really leverage my best plots and work them effectively. And now what it's down to is filling out all of the common plots, basically. And for those, I'm just going to go with the maxed Chaos Legion reward cards. So that's what I focus on when I look at the market.
Has there been any discussions or revitalizations of the idea of land surfing? Speaking of having a lot of unused land.
So land surfing, I don't think it's going to happen. Now, that might disappoint some people, but we never made any definite promises in regards to land surfing. It was always just an idea that was kind of tossed back and forth, something cool that would be neat to do. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes we have these really cool ideas, and then once we start getting into it, we realize, oh, that's going to be extremely complicated and it might not end up making sense after all, and it ends up having to be cut. So that's a bit disappointing, but it's all part of the whole idea of being transparent about everything that we're doing. Being transparent means discussing the ideas, some of the brainstorming that we're doing. A lot of ideas are talked about in town halls all the time that are more speculative in nature, and land surfing just ended up being one of those. At the time when the idea was first discussed, I don't remember originally who came up with the idea. It might have been Hardpoint, but I think Hardpoint was one of the big proponents that was really pushing land surfing, at least. And he thought that it would be relatively straightforward to add it on to the work that was being done for the initial land release. He thought it would be kind of a natural extension of that work. And so we thought, oh, yeah, great idea. Let's do this. Everyone was really gung-ho about it, right? But then Hardpoint left the team, and Farpatron continued working on land. And there wasn't really a big focus on land surfing at that point. Without Hardpoint, there wasn't really like some guy like driving forward land surfing, like saying, hey, let's make sure we really get this in here. And it just got kind of set aside. And then when we started talking about Land 2.0, we realized that it doesn't really make that much sense in the context of Land 2.0. Like, how would this even work? It raises so many questions, such a Pandora's box of trying to figure out how it would even work with Land 2.0. So ultimately, I think it's an idea that's going to be dropped, which is unfortunate, but it happens sometimes.
Yeah, because there's so many different paths you could take with different buildings, and then upgrading the buildings themselves that are envisioned for 2.0, right? If someone's land surfing and does all that, and that's not what you wanted to do with your land, and then you have to either tear all that down or start over again, or it just seems like it probably does get complicated quick, especially with all the different options you'll have with land 2.0.
Yeah, at this point, with the code base looking like it is, I think it would be extremely difficult to get that added in, and it would probably take way more effort than it's worth, really.
Well, appropriate bookends that land surfing.
You heard it here first, both times.
land surfing is born on the People's Guild with Hardpoint about a year ago, and put swiftly to rest with Cryptomancer here. So thanks for that, Cryptomancer.
Yeah, I don't want to be the guy to put the nail in the coffin or anything, but if
you're
you're
that
still
guy. You are the Undertaker.
maybe you shouldn't be.
Awesome, man. So I'd love to kind of talk about reward cards. So I know that was on the list. What Royal Eagle called out a couple of days ago. Have you guys started talking about the next iteration, learning from possibly past mistakes with regards to the previous Soulbound set, whether that be some of these cards are incredibly OP and must have, and bringing summoners into the fold, and through those summoners allowing for Gladius cards to come into the mix. The kind of depth of the reward card set. I mean, it's I might be wrong, but I think it's a more substantial set size than even Rift Watchers was. So I'd love to kind of be a fly on the wall for at least as much as you're willing to share for some of the discussions around, what did we get wrong, what did we get right, and what should we kind of embrace moving forward with this next Soulbound set.
So the reward cards, I can't really tell you much about that because I'm not involved in the planning process for that. I know that planning is going on for them, but that's more Call Me Tim's department. You should get him on the show one of these days. He could go into vast detail about the cards and ability planning and what summoners are going to be, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's all his specialty, working all that out. I think from my point of view, I'm just happy to have him in charge of all of that. I think it's a very difficult thing to do, to try and balance all these cards against previous sets. And it only becomes more difficult as we go forward and more cards get added. I think he's been doing an excellent job of it so far. He really took Rebellion and ran with it. And I expect that the next reward set is going to be pretty awesome as well. I think you're going to continue to see a lot of abilities that are very nuanced and work together in subtle ways. That's been one of his hallmarks so far, I think. There's a lot of good synergies that exist in Rebellion, but you really have to be strategic about how you apply the cards. You have to really think a lot about what cards to use in different situations. And some of them are very subtle, like the new airdrop summoners, Lorcus and Cryptic, these dual tactic summoners. I think they're going to be really excellent in some situations as opposed to others. So you can probably continue to see that sort of subtleness applied in the reward set as we go ahead. But unfortunately, I can't really provide any details on it.
Okay. Well, we did have, just to clarify, we had Call Me Tim on, I want to say end of January, sometime in February. So if you haven't checked out that episode, I highly suggest going back and listening to it. We, at that point in time, one of the big points of discussion was Rebellion. We were curious around, for the most part, I agree with the take that he's done a fantastic job. I do have a question mark around, there's a lot of cards in Rebellion that don't really see that significant value add going from, on a common card, for example, going from level 9 to level 10. Whereas if you look at, sets past like Untamed, that's where, kind of the essential ability comes into play for cards. So that was something that we, did call out with Call Me Tim. I don't remember exactly the response, but something else that we were really pining for on that episode with Call Me Tim was for my boy Dallin to see his day. It's been a while since we've called him out as kind of a focal point on the show, but empowering Cripple to do damage to immune monsters, and maybe Expose is the solution there, introducing a new ability to get around immunity. I still feel like Cripple should have an impact on an immunity monster, but we'll see. But yeah, we should definitely try and reach back out to Call Me Tim, see if we could get him back on for round 2, and maybe do a little a look into the crystal ball for the next Soulbound set.
That's an interesting point that you just touched on, that sometimes when abilities seem to have a weakness or a flaw, then some other ability later on ends up coming around that counteracts that flaw or makes up for that weakness. And that's part of the design philosophy in general that we try to take into account. So rather than like nerfing cards or rather than changing the way the abilities work a lot, we like to look at introducing new things further down the line that compensate in various ways. And another favorite example that I have there is the recharge ability. So recharge, like you have to wait for the first round to go by, and then your monster can attack in the second round. And that ability always initially bugged the heck out of me. Like it felt pretty useless. Like those recharge monsters, I didn't play them a lot, and I didn't think it was really that strong an ability. And so I was thinking, oh, man, I wish we kind of recoded the ability and fixed it and changed the way it worked. But we held fast on that until the ambush ability came along. And now that we have ambush, and especially the ambush summoner Akane, um, I think recharge has been given new life. Like now you can recharge in the ambush round and then attack in the first round, which solves a lot of the shortcomings of that ability. So that's probably my favorite example of how we take an ability that's looked at as being a little bit weak, and then we resolve that weakness later on by adding some new mechanic into the mix. And I'd like to see more of that going forward, where we balance things out that way in future sets.
Yeah. Also, with the shift kind of in the meta to more defensive gameplay, as opposed to just all out blitz offense, that has made recharge more viable. One, because you can do that extra damage, and two, like recharge doesn't really work if you know, like, well, by the time we hit round 2, this match might be halfway over, and we're probably maybe not even getting to round 4, right? But if this is going to go 10 rounds, the recharge ability becomes way more valuable.
Yep, exactly. And combine that with Venka, and you can do some serious damage. You can just tear apart the opponent's tanks.
Venka is something else, man. She did not disappoint. She is a lot of fun.
She is
but
wild.
she is wild. She is vile for sure. Yeah, it's something you called out there, Cryptomancer, that I kind of want to expand on for a second. Maybe we're not going to see the adjustment to something like Cripple and bring direct value to a summoner like Dallin. But if Death is empowered with, maybe 1 or 2 exposed monsters, all of a sudden Dallin becomes a much more viable play. So maybe that's, yeah, we got to reach it. Call me Tim. We're coming for you. Let's get you back on for round 2. And
he's still on the crusade. I thought you were going to give up hope.
Never.
This man will not go down without a fight.
Despite seeing, I'm very happy with Lorcus and the value that he brings to Team Death. I think Cryptic is going to bring even more life into Team Death, and but Astral Entity, I think, has kind of firmly cemented its place as one of the best summoners in non-magic matches. I want a well-rounded summoner stable for Death Hep. I'm not giving up on Dallin yet, man.
All right. You still have your Waka?
I do. Waka is an interesting one, man. I feel like when it rains, it pours. And when it's dry, it's full on drought. I'll stick poisons in ambush and all across the back line in round 1 for a handful of matches, and then I won't stick a single poison for the next 5 matches. So he's still got his place, and he's still very effective and very fun when it does work. But yeah,
I've still got my Waka as well. I've always liked him. I think he gets a bad rep. He's always been a fun one for me.
You play him often with some of the new Rebellion cards?
I do, yes. He's still one of my go-to summoners. and he works out more often than not. I'd say it's fun to spray that poison everywhere. The key is you gotta have the right supporting cards to really make him effective. Like you want to spread that poison around. You want a couple sneaks. You want some snipes. You want some opportunity. If you don't spread it around, then yeah, he's not going to do so well. But if you can manage to do that, it often goes my way.
Yeah. Yeah, my favorite play is Death has that the epic ranged scattershot card, 4 mana card. Double strike, scattershot ranged, and then the I'm blanking on the name, but the 4 mana Drybone Bowdog who's got ambush and scattershot. So in that first round, in that first round, you hypothetically could stick four poisons by the end of round one, which is pretty tough to overcome if they land.
Yeah, I got to get that card level up for Cryptic comes out. I think that's one of the ones I was kind of sleeping on. Might have to grab a couple of those. Avaricitus.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how to pronounce that one either, but that sounds like the right one.
I can never remember his name myself.
Avaristius.
Avaristius.
Avaristius. Yeah, we got to get. It'd be cool if you could push maybe some in the lower section of a card or something like that. We could get proper name pronunciations, maybe an IPA phonetic format, and
there you go.
I remember having a conversation with Joey about that actually not too long ago. It was when K came out. The conflict card, it's spelled Kei, and so I pronounce it K, which is kind of like the Japanese pronunciation. But Joey was saying the official pronunciation is Kai, I think. But I'm thinking Kai, no, he spelled out Kie. And so Joey was like, "Nah, we're gonna do things a bit differently in the Splinterverse." And so he likes playing around with phonetic pronunciations and giving certain flavors to the different races that inhabit Praetoria. So I'm kind of curious myself. Do you guys, when you see that card, do you think of it as K or do you think of it as Kai?
I was going to say Key.
Just
to really throw a wrench in the. I mean, K-E. Yeah, the E throws me off.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think of it as Kai simply, I think, because I think that's how I first heard it pronounced in a town hall before I even saw the spelling. So I think that's just kind of what makes my brain think it's spelled that way.
Yeah, I think that's the way it's pronounced in the Conflicts intro video too, because that's the context that it came up in. So I watched the intro video and I was like, Joey, why is it saying Kai, not K? So it's kind of interesting, I think, the different ways that people can pronounce the cards. Like you play and you don't hear them spoken out loud all the time, so you kind of come up with like your own internal pronunciations, and you tend to think of it as that way in your mind, and then you get surprised when you're talking about it, and you're like, "Oh, what card is that? That's not how you pronounce it."
That happens to me all the time, especially with books. When I read books, and I would have a very tendency to kind of just assign, especially if it's, I read a lot of fantasy books and you have a lot of different characters and they'll have like long, complicated kind of sounding names. And so my brain will just like assign something to it as a way to kind of like shorten it and speed it up, especially if it's something that's multisyllable. So I'll just kind of like give it almost like a nickname in my head or a weird pronunciation that kind of fits, but is in no way right at all whatsoever. And then I'll be like talking with a friend about a book and I'll be like, oh yeah, and then this character, and they're like, what the fuck you talk, like what character is that, what are you talking about? I'm like, it's like the main character. And then I'll be like, you mean this? I'm like, oh yeah, right, that's actually how it's probably actually pronounced, right? So
yeah, exactly. Have either of you ever read the Shannara books by Terry Brooks?
Yeah, I've read I read the first one, I think, but it was also a I don't know if you've on MTV did a series of it at one point. It was like a couple seasons of it, and it was really good.
Yeah, I watched the series. I like that.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
yeah,
Did you
that's
say
another
MTV?
example.
Yeah, it was an MTV show.
Oh.
Yeah,
Randomly.
so I've always thought of the pronunciation of that as being like the sword of Shannara. But I think I read an interview with Terry Brooks once, and he said something like when he was writing it, he had it in his mind as being Shannara or something like that. So Shannara. So
Did
that's
you send
another
him an email and
phrase.
tell him he's got it wrong?
I wouldn't dare. He can think of it however he wants to.
My wife and I watched that show. And we always like joked that it just called it like the shenanana or something like we'd always just give it like kind of a weird like trailing off, like get the first syllable right and then mumble something else, and we all know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I did get to meet him once. When I was in university, he came to a book signing at the university bookstore. So I got some of my books autographed and said, I love your books. I was a total Terry Brooks fanboy.
Oh, nice.
That was
Nice.
fun. One of
Awesome.
the highlights of my youth, meeting him.
Did you go to school in Washington State?
I did, yes. University of Washington, close to Seattle. That was my school. They have an excellent computer science department there, which is why I wanted to go. Majored in computer science and got a minor in math.
There you go.
Gotcha.
Huskies,
Go Huskies,
right?
huh?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, love the Huskies. I still have a lot of my old Huskies shirts, and amazingly, they still fit.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Well,
Is
cool.
that in Seattle, or is it kind of, because I remember I've spent a little bit of time in Seattle, and I remember seeing like maybe it was just they have some buildings there now, or like a bookstore or something. I don't know, but or so is that like kind of close to, maybe not like downtown Seattle, but like what's that, like Capitol Hill area or something, or is it further out?
Yeah, it's within the city itself.
Okay.
Like if you know where the Evergreen State floating bridge is, it's just like on the other side of that bridge.
Okay. Cool.
So it's not like the core downtown area, but adjacent to it.
Cool. All right, gentlemen. We'll quickly approaching the 2 hour mark. Cryptomancer, as always, man. You are welcome back anytime. I'm glad that you took me up on the offer of naming yourself a regular guest on the People's Guild. So we'll get you back on in a few months' time, and
Yeah, we'll get to schedule for 6 months out. But yeah.
Sure, always happy to come on and talk with you guys. Always have a great time.
awesome. Any parting words for the community, Cryptomancer?
Well, I guess I just say if you haven't already, check out land prefix titles in QA. Make sure you got your plots all squared up and ready to go, because those are going to be some pretty sweet ranked battle bonuses.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
lots
Those
more
numbers are
stuff.
crazy. I wonder if that's gonna make any waves on the land market. All those folks that are sitting 2, 3, 4 plots. It kind of makes sense for the ranked bonus to go for the warden prefix title, right? Just for
Definitely.
any bonus
Plots
helps.
are pretty cheap these days. It wouldn't take much to push you over if you're right on the edge there.
Yeah, what are the different titles, and
Warden is 5 plots.
okay.
I will be getting that one. Rune Guard is 5 Rooney, and then I think the rest are dynamic, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Cryptomancer?
No, they're all fixed percents. Oh gosh, I don't know the percents off the top of my head. Let me just actually go onto the Mav server real quick, and I'll just take a look at the thing. So there's a new prefix title screen which has them all laid out as a handy reference for you. So when you go into the land screen and then you click on production to get to your production overview screen, there's going to be a new button on that screen. It'll say your current title, and there'll be a view rankings button. So you click on that, and then that opens up the 2 new screens, which are the resource leaderboard screen and the prefix title screen. So if I look at the prefix title screen, it's got them all listed out, and it shows which ones you're eligible for and which one is currently active. So we got Warden with a 5% bonus. Then the next one up is Marshal if you own a keep, and that gives you 10%. And then Rune Guard is 5 or more Rooney working on the land. That gives you 15%.
Nice.
The next one up is Sentinel for castle owners, and that's 25%. And then the 5 battle mages that have the most research in your territory behind the Overseer, that's Magister, that's 35%. The Overseer is the one that has the most research in each territory, and that's 50%. And then,
wow, 50%.
And then, of course, you got Vonarch, but I'm just going to call that one Vuktis, and that's also
it should 50. Be. So you're going to qualify as Magister, is that right?
Yep, I'm a Magister right now, but I recently bumped up my research rate, so I'm gunning for Michael B., who is the current Overseer of the Broken Lands. I'm coming for him. I estimate his rank stay unchanged.
Nice.
I should overtake him in like 2.5 months or something like that.
Well, hopefully Michael B doesn't hear this part of the episode and
respond
in kind.
or hopefully he's already got all his plots maxed out and can't put any more on it or something.
Wonderful. All right, Cryptomancer. Well, yeah, like I said, man, always enjoy getting a little catch up with you, man. Enjoy. How much longer are you down in Borneo, man?
About another, 2.5 weeks or so. Coming back in around mid-June.
Cool.
We tend to stay over here for about a month at a time when we come. I'd like to stay longer, but there's those bills and stuff that need to be paid back in Japan, so it's logistically tough to stay longer than that.
Yeah. Well, enjoy the rest of your stay down in down near the equator, and hopefully you get your fill of that delicious Malaysian food and have a safe trip back home. And I'm sure we'll be touching base, hearing from you sooner than later, man.
Yeah.
Thanks. I definitely will. Always a pleasure, guys.
Awesome.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for all you guys do. Definitely, I know you guys catch a lot of flack, but definitely appreciate all the hard work. I think we need to come up and here's a good use of the DAO proposal. So we need to set a day as like Hug a Dev Day or something like that, or be nice to the team for a day. Yeah, Team Appreciation Day, like one day where no one's allowed to just be an asshole in Discord. Everybody just try to be nice for a day. We need that. That would be a worthwhile DAO vote, something we could actually pull off and hopefully implement.
Praetorian Peace Day.
I like that.
Let's dub it. Awesome. Well, Cryptomancer, again, man, absolute pleasure. Everybody out there, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. You have been listening to
The People's Guild.